This is going.
All right, so we're going to now share stories between Dr. Crowe and Dr. Moore. In the other video, Dr. Moore has shared, and I was taking notes. I wanted to point out as well, like I took about 4 pages of notes, and that's my style. That's I hope um, you saw how engaged I was. I felt very engaged, though I know it can be somewhat obtrusive to take notes. But I do ask my students and anyone else to be active on the note-taking side because you never know how details slip out of your consciousness, and I think sometimes it's really effective to get those down the page, especially for the work that you'll have to do later after you hear your partner's story, going back to reconstruct it and to retell it as if it were yours is really the goal here, and that requires some detail. That requires you to put yourself in the moment. So I'm going to share a story. I forget exactly which prompt it is, um, but that matters not so much as just telling it. And this is a story about my time visiting my father, who lives in Nevada, in Las Vegas, and he's an attorney there. He's lived there for 3 decades now. So my parents were married, but they split up when I was like 4 or 5, and then my father left town. We were living in Philadelphia, and decided to move first for a job, but then it was kind of just by choice to Nevada. So that was a big change. I don't have much recollection of those early years of him being around that much. So this story kind of has 2 parts. I want to talk about the first time I went to visit him, and then I'd like to flash forward to another visit when I was older that I think kind of encapsulates the story. So the first time, there's a lot of humor in this. I was just turned 9, and it was my first flight, first kind of real trip, on my own. So my mother was anxious about that. I was excited, as I recall, and I believe there were some rules back. I think it was literally like TWA before they went out of business, and there were some rules about how young a child could be unaccompanied. So I recall my father, to his credit, flew from Nevada to Philadelphia to basically pick me up and then fly back because I was going out west with him to do a sort of tour of Nevada and relative environs there. So he brought his girlfriend along with him at the time. So I was first meeting her. She had her own set of children, and this was my kind of encounter with, I guess, what you call future stepmother. She was very kind, a woman named Cheryl, as I recall, very accommodating of children and understanding that I was nervous and hadn't seen my father in a while. I remember her being very supportive. Just her presence was nice to have. My dad, on the other hand, is notoriously like unemotionally present. So his role was, he would check in occasionally and say how you doing, but it was very very limited kind of interaction. So to our luck, this was August, I believe, 1989. I'm thinking, and the Philadelphia Eagles, who I still love, though I have some ambivalence towards, were playing a game against the Cleveland Browns, but they were going to the airport because it was a special game that was going to be played in Wembley Stadium, of all places, actually. So they were leaving Philadelphia International Airport at the same time I was to get on a plane to London, and I was going on a different plane to Las Vegas, but that was neither here nor there because I remember coming out of the restroom and with my father, I'm going back to where my father was waiting for our flight, and all of a sudden I see the most gigantic men, many African American, and just large men, walking down the path. And even if you don't know football, you would have noticed that they were together. They were all humongous and young and strong and fit and boisterous. They were like chatting and laughing. And I realized, looking at some of their faces, it was players like Reggie White, the great Hall of Famer who's sadly deceased. Other great big linemen, Clyde Simmons. And if you're an Eagles fan, if you have any sense of their history, these were the big names of the late 80s, early 90s. Anyway, my favorite player was Randall Cunningham. Randall Cunningham, I see, goes into the same restroom I just come out of. So, of course, I go back into the restroom because it's Randall Cunningham. You know? I didn't have to go urinate or anything. So, very awkwardly, I walk in and I see Randall Cunningham at the urinal, and I just stand at the next urinal next to him and look at him while he's doing his business. And I say, hi, Randall. I look up, hi, Randall. And he was very kind. You know, he's like, hey, kid. let me finish here, you know, before I sign an autograph or something. And as I recall, I don't think I got an autograph. Probably he was irked by my presence there. But I remember it so fondly, and somewhere there exists a, you know, what did you do this summer kind of story where I talk about this experience. So anyway, that happened, and then I got on the plane. So I was understandably, you know, amped up, excited, just couldn't believe I'd seen this legendary figure. And my father was, you know, I think he would admit he was also kind of excited by it. You know, he liked football too. In fact, football was something we connect on emotionally, as stereotypically men sometimes do, to avoid their actual emotional expression. So we were excited about that. And I bet my dad was probably purchasing a lot of candy for me, a lot of any treats I would want. The first time he had seen me, and he was all about, you know, giving me whatever I wanted, essentially. So I had eaten a lot. I had been very excited about seeing Randall Cunningham. Then we get on the plane, and it's not a direct flight. It's a flight that went from Philly to St. Louis to Las Vegas. So we get on the flight. Everything's good for the first half hour or so. And keep in mind, this is my first flight. And I start feeling anxiety, bodily sensations, nausea, really. And I told my dad that I think I'm going to throw up. And he did a little more than say, oh, you're fine, you're all right. It's just, you know, it's how you feel when you fly. And there were, back in those days, they had those barf bags, which I still see on occasion, but I haven't seen as much in a while. And he basically just gave me a barf bag. He opened it up like this, kind of flapped it open, and laid it in front of me. And thinking, like, okay, you know, if the worst happens, you got your bag. Everything's good. I proceeded then to, while holding the barf bag, violently vomit basically over the seat in front of me. It's like projectile, disgusting, horrible, like as bad as it could get. And, you know, it got on people. Like, it was really bad, you know, horrible, you know. So luckily the woman Cheryl was there to kind of placate the people around, and the flight attendants at the time were wonderful. My dad was, you know, less than stoic, but we got me cleaned up, you know, and we made it to St. Louis. All right, so that's somewhere over Kentucky. It's where that horrific incident took place. So we get to St. Louis, and then you know, it was a summertime trip, so there were a lot of thunderstorms in the region, and our next flight was canceled, so we had to get a hotel in St. Louis, and that was fine. You know, we had kind of a night together at a hotel. It was nice. But then, so then the next day, so this is a whole day now ahead. We finally arrive in Las Vegas, and we head immediately for this sort of road trip. We go to pick up Cheryl's family. She had one daughter who was roughly my age, and several sisters that were younger. So this was like my potential step family, you know, that I really never even heard of before this, but was excited to see. You know, really, I think anything would be better than, once I got off that plane, I was happy. And I guess, yeah, the culmination of this part of the story was we had a nice day, kind of started traveling the West, and we ended up in some like Best Western or something. And this was a day when you could like rent movies at the hotel, I guess similar to today, but you would have, it was a roundabout process where you had to pick a movie and, you know, pay for it by calling the front desk and all that. So I remember the rigmarole of deciding we're going to watch a movie. So we couldn't agree on which movie there were, you know, it was obviously a situation where now as a father I would defer to the children and let them watch a movie that they would like, you know, Disney or something PG. But I recall my father's insistence that we watch a movie called Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, which is hilarious, but it's also very like, well, adult would be the wrong word. It's silly,
Mm.
But it's not the kind of movie that a kid would, understand or appreciate the humor of. And I remember, I wouldn't have expressed it this way at the time, but my frustration had grown. I felt like I was in under the control of someone who clearly was incompetent as a parent and didn't care that much about my experience being pleasant other than giving me treats and placating me with, whatever it is that might shut me up in the moment. So when I didn't get my way, I forget the other movie on it, it might have been Back to the Future or something. When I didn't get my way to watch the movie I wanted, I said probably the first curse word of my life. I referred to the movie as dirty, rotten shitheads. Sorry, I put that in quotes. But I thought, that was very funny, and it actually did put a humorous touch on the story. I remember getting a big laugh from my, father's girlfriend's children. They were cracking up. And it also softened my father a little bit, that he recognized that I had some, a sensibility and an awareness of how I was being treated that I didn't appreciate. I couldn't have articulated it, that I was frustrated by his less than stellar parenting, but I think that message got across. And the rest of the trip, I recall, for the most part, was very, fun. We did theme parks, and we did, national parks. We went all over the Southwest over a period of 10 days or 2 weeks. So it ended up being a memorable first flight experience. And my flight back, which was by myself, was much more pleasant. So I just enjoyed the view and did not get sick at all. But it was an experience that was marked by, anxiety that I wasn't even aware of. I was too young to really know what I was feeling. And the sort of outward expression of that, the disastrous flight followed by, the scene in the hotel was, stuck with me. I'm still not sure exactly why, but I have pride in the humor of that story, and underneath it is a sense of disconnection and, a recognition of something that I wouldn't even say was lost, but sort of never was, that sort of close parental connection that I do have with my mother, to this day. That's wonderful, but that I never quite had with a father figure. So I hope that comes across. Oh yeah, so that's it for me.
May I ask a question?
Absolutely.
When you were watching the movie, where were you?
I think I remember being on the bed.
No. I mean, where were you in general?
In Utah. Somewhere in Utah, actually. Yeah.
Oh, so this is so you were at like a Utah hotel,
right? Like
when you were doing all of your
the first day. Yeah.
Your
we went from
exploration.
We drove a lot. We went from Las Vegas all the way to like southeastern Utah, like Moab, near Arches National Park.
Yeah.
That's what I recall. That was a long day. After the long flight day.
Right. So literally get off the plane, pick up the family, and then start your journey.
Yeah, because we got out of St. Louis, we got the first flight out. Probably
there was
at 5 a.m.
Right.
We slept in the hotel, but we had to get up really early. I remember that.
Right.
So we must have got to Vegas, probably Vegas time, 6 or 7 a.m. Breakfast, meet up with the family,
and then go
start the road trip.
Yeah. So the road trip happened right away.
So it was probably like late evening that we settled into the hotel.
Right.
I remember they had a pool. It was a beautiful place and a beautiful view. And, if you know that area if you like landscape or just amazing rock structures, like southeastern Utah is just impressive. And I do still have a love of the outdoors that I do believe was prompted in part by trips like that. I had several over my childhood where I went to Vegas and we did get that kind of thing. But yeah, that was the most memorable for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. I'm good. That's
Great.
good.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
I'm going to pause this and thank you guys for listening.